Okay, so it's the new year. Yeah, new year.
恭喜发财，恭喜发财 Happy
Oh
New
yeah, it's Chinese New Year.
Year! And it's the
So
year of the tiger. We start with the raw.
new year, and I suppose like attackers are getting more creative. But this is actually something that happened since last year. I think early December, and the culmination of that came out in a Mothership article detailing the victim's story, whereby he lost 500,000 Singapore dollars in just 2 hours as a result of the OCBC phishing scam. So it seems to be a combination of like different attack vectors. Doc, when you look at this, what are you thinking?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Securitylah Podcast Season 2.
Okay, so a little bit of background about this attack. Referring back to Kat's reference to the Mothership article, I'll just quickly go through the article so everyone knows what actually happened. So this poor person is a 43-year-old public servant, got an SMS that seemed to look almost like OCBC's SMS asking them, say, hey, your account got some problem. So you better do something about it, otherwise your account may get locked. Unfortunately, due to certain turn of events whereby this person's card was rejected while he was overseas, it sounded a lot legitimate. So what the person did was, oh crap, something is wrong with my account, so I better do this. Going into the SMS, clicking the link, which is already big no-no, and then putting in the login details, put in the OTP. So essentially, it's like you gave someone here's the keys to my house, and here's the access code to my alarm. And
Yeah.
So
And what's really scary was that the official OCBC SMS thread, which asked the victim to access the website, looked so authentic, right? And I don't know, could the bank have done anything about it to prevent this?
Well, we've not gone into the actual issue, but we'll start with the SMS phishing. A lot of banks, one of the awareness that they put out to their customers is do not click links. And the problem is the banks are also part of the issue. The reason why I say this is that based on my experience working in financial sector, working telecommunications, there's always this push from sales and marketing to say, hey, we want to launch this new product to our customers, but we've got to put a link, otherwise the customers don't know where to go. We're not going to get the right level of click-through rates. We're not going to get adoption because, if we introduce friction into the whole marketing and the sales process, we're not going to be able to sell this new uber awesome credit card that we have. So guess what happens? You have marketing pushing the CISO, say, hey, approve this. I got to send this link out on the SMS. And CISO scratches his head and said, no, do you guys know that, we've just worked with the fraud management team and we've sent out to the whole our customer base to say that do not click links. We will not send links to customers. And if you do get a link, please don't click on it. But then, the CMO saying, we don't do this campaign. We won't hit our target. You don't have bonus for your Chinese New Year, leh.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, crap. What do I do now? I need my bonus. Okay, allow all these links going in. So here is your average customer looking at the message and say, oh yeah, the number looks the same. Looks like from HSBC. And then I get, OCBC. And then I get this message with the link. Must be correct. I click on the link, So the first thing is consistency of messaging is very important to customers. You have to understand customers have different varying levels of marketing understanding. So some of them can understand that this is a legitimate message. Secondly, may not even be able to see it. And when you get something on SMS, the from number can be easily spoofed. So if the SMS comes from, say, a short code, say 62000, and you get that, it's not very difficult to spoof an SMS to say that it originates from that short code. So it's trivial, it's quite easy. So for someone to actually send an SMS pretending to be like your organization, it doesn't take much skill set. It just costs a little bit, but it's doable and it's fairly easy. Because that number you see on that SMS is not authenticated. What I mean by not authenticated means anyone can put the number there. So it is not legitimate. It may be false. It is just an indicator. And the same thing that I've said before about number, when you get a call on your phone and displays a number, that number, mind you, please remember, is for convenience sake.
Yeah.
It may not be accurate.
Yeah. And very, very sadly, right, when banks also do send out warning messages or anything, it's usually on their website. Like, okay, I do online banking a lot. Sometimes I go to my online banking website and they do have warnings and alerts there, but how many of us actually pay attention to it? And then to most of us, I believe, at least to my, people of a certain generation, like for example, my mom, it will just go over their heads. They will not understand what it means.
True. I completely agree. And I'm equally guilty of it. I go to the ATM machine, I put in my card, I punch in the number, I know the next one's going to be an awareness message. Automatically. So most customers will just go next, okay, right, next. So you have this messaging fatigue as well.
Yeah.
Which, the customers are we're bombarded with so much information.
Yeah.
But I guess it's akin to, I like to use this parallel. You go to a shop, a hardware shop, you buy a knife. And you have this nice new cleaver or a knife where you chop your chicken or whatever, you cook meat, vegetables, right? If you cut yourself, do you go back to the shop and scold the shopkeeper?
No.
I would love to see someone doing that, because it's almost like in this kind of situation, it's like I go back to the shop, I say, hey, what nonsense is this, man? Your knife cut my finger, What's wrong with you? Huh?
User problem lah. It's not the tool's problem, right?
So we have a saying in IT, the problem is between the chair and the keyboard. So, but that's a story for another day. But I have a different view on that. But the point is that it's something that I would call it as a shared responsibility more than anything else. Whatever we do on the physical world, on the cyber world, you can't run away from the fact that I need to know what I'm doing, and I can be woefully ignorant. That doesn't really apply. It goes both sides, right?
Okay.
But this is a bank, so let's come back to the bank issue. So if you look at it from a high levels perspective, the bank has username, passwords, one-time token, whether they use the mobile phone or they use a physical token. So, in one glance, you would say that, well, yeah, they would have done whatever they could have done. So here you have the issue. I'm referring back to the Mothership article, where the minute that the attackers got this piece of information, they logged in immediately. They increased the payment limit. They added new pays and they started sending out multiple transactions.
They were able to do all that just because of the person accessing that website. What do you think actually happened? What's the detail of it?
I guess what would have happened is they set up this phishing site where it looked almost like the bank. They captured these credentials. And I think this is a very organized syndicate, because what would have happened is the one-time token would have a validity. And it's usually like about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on what is the bank's timeout mechanism. So they would have observed this is the validity of this particular, the token validity, and they would have had someone in the keyboard to immediately start and making these transactions. It can be automated, which means they would have used a bot. So what a bot that is a program that automates all this, putting in the inputs. They use screen scraping. So they scrape the screen. Oh, this is the login field. Okay, put the login. This is the password field. I put password. This is the what OTP field. I put OTP. I click login. So it simulates the activity of a user. But there's also a drawback in that, because some organizations, they have certain widgets that runs at the back that prevents automated type of attacks. So if it sees that you're doing login, password, and OTP within 2 seconds, then it knows you're most likely an automated bot and stop you from logging in. So my guess is, if it worked this successful, chances are, again, I'm theorizing, chances are you would have had someone behind a keyboard, probably a whole team of 5-10 people in a location somewhere, trying to gain access, keying in, already have a preset script. Okay, go to this link, add new payee, go to this, do this, go to this, do this, because it seems very methodical and very fast.
Yeah. In just a space of 2 hours, they managed to rake in 500,000 over a series of transactions, over a series of different transactions.
You see, they were smart enough. They were smart enough. This kind of tells you one thing. They are also aware of the banking limits. So if you notice, it says that multiple transactions up to 50,000. So what they would have done is they would have played the limits, and they know this bank, if you go up to this X amount, it won't trigger alerts or step up transactions or whatever. Because some banks, what they do is, if your amount is too much, they trigger step up authentication. Okay. So in step up authentication, they may ask you another question, or they may ask you to key in your password again, or whatever. So to prevent this, they would have said, okay, as long as we stay under 50K, we can drain the account. So they would have gone in, checked the balance. This fella got 500K. Okay, whack.
So they did what they had to do, all well within limits. And that was why the bank did not notice anything was wrong. Yeah.
So it's like, I put a parallel to prepaid, mobile prepaid. Say in Malaysia, if you buy 30 ringgit, 50 ringgit, nobody's going to bother, because that's the normal denomination. If you top up your account with 1,000 ringgit, obviously it's going to trigger something, some alarm, some alert somewhere, because it's not a usual denomination. So banks, I would assume, have similar controls in place, whereby suddenly you see a huge transaction going through, that would have triggered it.
Okay. 2 hours, still 2 hours.
2 hours is amazing. But in fact, the thing is this, if you ask me, by my standards, 2 hours is slow, which indicates to me that it's most likely a warm body behind a keyboard rather than a bot.
Okay.
Because they withdraw a quantum of 50,000, and the amount was 500,000. What, 10 transactions in 2 hours? Okay. Come on. It's very slow.
Okay. And what's really sad also, according to this article by the Straits Times, is that between December 8 to 17, so this has been going on already for some time, 26 customers had lost a total of 140,000 Singapore dollars to phishing scams by that very same bank. And what was happening? What do you think the bank was doing to address it?
Looking at the first case, the case of the public servant who lost the 500K, the bank's response was, if you ask me, should have been better, And the reason why I say that with my Malaysian accent, should have been better, because Singapore also use is that banks or institutions tend to have this notion that customers don't know nothing, and they're probably trying a fast one on the institution. So the initial response of the bank was, nah, we don't have any problem. You probably put in the wrong details or whatever. It's most likely customer issue. So there's a notion of, you probably made some mistake and you should look at it, rather than actually the bank should come up and say, okay, sir, thank you for your feedback. If you can give me all the details, we will send it to the back-end team for them to check. That if you ask me, that would have been the preferred way of responding to a customer, irrespective of whether you only have $10 or $50 in your account versus a high net worth customer who has millions of dollars, right? So that process, if you ask me, could have been much better compared to what happened. And I guess that was the same thing. And the bank only started realizing that they are having a problem when I guess more and more customers started calling them up. And it was evident because the contact center was suddenly becoming overloaded. Mind you, the contact center would have already been running in half the capacity due to pandemic. Because usually call centers are quite packed. You just say within a table of say 5 meters, you have 3 to 4 people, side by side with their headset and talking to customers. So that would have already been the case. And now it's Christmas, and everyone knows Christmas is a huge thing in Singapore. So a lot of people would have gone on leave and they would have said, year end, what could have possibly happened, right? And that was what the attackers were counting on. The fact that, I know you're going to be you're going to let your guard down. That's for sure. Yeah. So I'm counting on you to let your guard down so that I could milk the whole system for year end. So while it's Christmas for a lot of people and they've gone on holidays, it's also Christmas for the attackers because they were ka-ching, just using this bank.
Enjoying the show so far? Subscribe now so that you don't miss out on the latest episode. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many other platforms. Visit podcast.securityla.asia to get the links to subscribe.
The funny thing was the OCBC Group CEO was quoted saying that it was like fighting a war, which was one of the things that I think we in Security Law keep emphasizing. Security is not a security problem. Security is a business problem. Security is not just an issue as part of having a tech. It is a real, visible, tangible business problem. And it doesn't just affect OCBC in this case. It's a problem that affects all organizations. The day when we wake up and we say, okay, we really have to do something about it, and it's something that we have to work on, is when the attackers are going to have less of a chance to pull one of the stunts through.
If I recall correctly, the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is the regulator for the financial industry in Singapore, they did send out an opinion about this. They did state. I'm not sure whether they've it's legalized already or has become an act or turned into something. A
circular, a requirement.
Yeah, a requirement, an official requirement for the financial sector. But they did say that. They did communicate that the board of directors need to look at cybersecurity as well, and they need to take it much more seriously than they have before.
You see, that's the thing. A lot of organizations, they'll say, if it's not broken, everything's okay, don't worry about it. Malaysia, with their risk management and IT circular by Bank Negara, one of the attempts that was done to regulate the industry and to bring focus into cybersecurity was the requirements for a CISO to be appointed.
Yeah.
Right? That's one of the first things. And to actually have a board committee that looks at IT as a whole. If you ask me, that's really a step in the right direction, because traditionally, if you look at boards, they're always accountants, number crunchers, people who understands dollars and cents, and business decisions were primarily made based on finance terms. Let's put it that way. I think we've also seen in the past how some organizations made very poor decisions due to financial reasons. And this has affected organizations, not from just from cyber perspective, but even from a business availability perspective, where they struggle to justify, because the board says, if everything works well, then why do you need to spend?
Okay. Yeah, it's slowly coming back to me now. RMIT is Malaysia's version, but I think Singapore's version is TRM.
TRM, yes, that's exactly
whether
right.
it's secular or whether it's legally binding, something.
It's a requirement
enforced.
for the financial sector to abide by. So, based on my experience working with financial sector in Singapore, it's one of the circulars that we actually benchmark against to make sure that the Singapore operations meets the regulatory requirement.
Yeah,
So same thing. So in Malaysia we use RMIT, in Singapore we use the Master TRM. I'm sure they would have updated the circular due to this. Now, another interesting fact that I wanted, probably, Kat, you can give me your 2 cents on this.
Yeah.
OCBC eventually, for a lack of a better word, got arm twisted and paid out to the scam victims. Arm twisted or pinched, or however you want to put it, right? Because I mean, from if I look at it from an insurance perspective, if I'm an insurance provider and I look at the situation, I would say, yeah, the bank has put in username, password authentication, has put in the one-time PIN. So, the login is standard, following the standard. So the risk now, it's actually at the customer's level for allowing. And in this case, based on the Mothership article, it was obvious that the person, like the example I used earlier, gave the house keys and also gave the alarm code to someone else, thinking that, the person's going to take care of the house. So then he or she lost that amount of money. So I guess the regulator now is in a fix, because you've pushed the bank to pay. The first question is it going to set a precedence to say that future events such as this, will the bad guys get paid out, and will the victims also get paid out? Because right now the bad guys have got their payday. They have milked the system, and they're not probably somewhere holidaying, they got their what already. So now the question is, now the victim is recovering and they're getting back their money, which is good. I'm happy for the victims. But how do we move forward from this? What's your opinion on this?
I would love to hear Prof's opinion. She's just joined us. I don't know. It's you asked whether this is a precedent for when, if future attacks like this happen again, what's going to happen? What's it going to be? How is it going to pan out? I don't know. It's really hard to say. I mean, how thorough was the bank in ensuring that their security systems were in place and working efficient and effectively? But at the same time, also, it was a user problem, right? The bank had done what they could. They had done what they were able to, to get the warning out there. So it's and you mentioned just now also about shared responsibility. So maybe between the bank and the onus is not just on the bank to ensure that the victims and the users are safe. The users have to ensure that they are also, doing online transactions or whatever transactions with their bank safely. So it's a very tough question, Doc. I seriously have no answer for this.
So let me try to chip in while Prof is getting into gear. So the first thing is, if you look at from a legal standpoint, essentially paying ransom is illegal. But whether do you consider this as paying ransom or not paying ransom, I guess we have to get a lawyer in to actually debate about this particular topic. But the bank is actually compensating the victim. So technically you're not paying the bad guys, because the bad guys have already taken the money away.
Yeah.
So it's the bank that's actually paying the victims. See, that's one thing. I don't think there's an issue about the security controls, because the one-time PIN worked, the username password worked. So unless if that failed for whatever reason, if you can use anybody's account, as long as you have the right login and you just put A 20 times and it goes in, then you have an authentication issue. Or just say the one-time PIN gets bypassed, then you can say that effectively the system doesn't work. That's granted. But here in this case, the system worked. So we have also the issue of the users unable to understand or unable to fathom whether this is actually an actual bank requirement or is it something malicious. So,
but Doc, are you happy with the bank's response time and also response to the customers?
I'm honestly very disappointed with the bank, because I think that's why I said I think the bank could have done much better. You see, if a person calls into the call center, there's a metrics called first call resolution. First call resolution basically means that when someone calls to the call center, I will try to sort the person out without creating a ticket. That means within the first call, I was able to cow-team the person, for a lack of better word. Sorry, it's not English. It's Chinese. This means that I'm settling the customer. So you settle the customer within the first call, and you show that you're a very good customer service agent. Now, this is counterproductive for this kind of issue, because end of the day, you're going to say, I'm sorry, sir, but I think you probably made a mistake or whatever. Your account seems to be okay, blah, blah, blah. And you terminate the call. Now, here's the problem with this whole scenario. You didn't log in a case. So there's nothing in the system that says that this user now complained, this. The call logs will be there, but that's just the call logs. Unless if a ticket is created, then there's an actual case that's logged into the system. And then the right tagging has to be applied, where you tag to say that this is a fraud. So for example, if a number of tickets on fraud starts coming into the system, someone looking at the daily numbers is going to say, hey, something is wrong. We better get the backend team, the fraud management team, the cybersecurity team, all these guys, get them into a war room and let's look at what's going on.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, their response was a bit too late. It was only after that where they started engaging people, they started getting 100 people on the problem.
Yes.
And then we realized that the number of people that were affected were 500 people. And you're talking about going through transactions of 500 people that's already affected, not to mention whatever ex-customer base that you have. Singapore is about 5 million people in the island, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So you even if you have 30-40% of the whole customer base, that's still quite a lot of transactions. And the fraudsters are smart. They may already have tons of mule accounts that's just waiting to be used. And if you notice, the money was already transferred out of the country. So which means that Singapore government now has to call on Interpol or SWIFT or one of the other international banks and check with them. And by then, the money would have been bouncing off multiple places, and within a day or two, the money is actually out of the system. Someone in Ukraine may go into the ATM, withdraw the money, or by then buy Bitcoins and start pushing it to different wallets, use methods like mixing to bounce it off through multiple different wallets.
Yeah. So all that money is well and truly lost.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit cheesed off because sure, OCBC is paying the victims, but they're only paying 30. And the number of victims, I think, is way, way more than that. So it's like they're hoping to appease the victims or like put themselves in a better light in the public opinion by paying out to the victims. But at the end of the day, it's only still just 30. There's actually way more than that. There's actually way many more victims than that.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. But I guess from a person who's worked in the financial sector before, I'm like, wow, you're lucky you get paid. Seriously, money missing usually bye-bye, So in this case, I guess it's more of, I guess the MAS also saw that the incident could have been handled better, in my opinion, which is why they would have pushed the banks to say that you got to take some of the risk. And I guess in one of the articles in if I'm not mistaken, Channel News Asia, is that the risk associated to transactions and such issues, I think MAS is going to come up with a guideline to say that how that risk is going to be apportioned, because it's not just going to be all on the bank. Customers cannot say, oh, I accidentally click on a phishing link, I accidentally put in my username, password, I accidentally also put in my PIN. Look, the bank or any organization can only do that much to make sure that your account is secure.
Fair enough.
If you still go ahead and do it, I don't see how you could still point the gun or the blame at the bank and say that you should have done something better.
Yeah, I just think something could have been better. Technology could have helped here, because like in this article, there's one paragraph that says, besides working to detect and stop the fraudulent transactions, there were staff who spent whole days just trawling through clients' portfolios to check if there were any suspicious transactions. Why is it still human powered? Why is it not automated still?
Kat, banks do have systems that detect fraud. In this case, I'll theorize two things. The first thing is that the fraud management system wasn't able to detect the kind of fraud that was happening at that moment. And secondly, the manual process was put into place just to verify if there's additional fraud or accounts that were affected due to this particular incident. So in this case, this may be a pattern that the system was not able to detect. Maybe they were operating within the parameters of the fraud management system, hence the system wasn't able to flag these kind of transactions. So here's the thing. One of our listeners who actually reached out to us in the condition of anonymity shared some details about how the person was going through all these transactions.
Thanks for joining us this week on Security Lab. Make sure to visit our website at securitylab.asia, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show.